Okay, this is the second part to my breakdown of this discussion between Richard Reeves of the Brookings Institute. He's also an author that has written this book on the state of boys and men recently. We're having a discussion about it with Rollo Tomassi and Michael Sartain. And the whole point of this, as I explained in the first, is really to push back on the Marxist doublespeak of individuals like this and just how duplicitous and dishonest it is. And secondarily, about the lack of pushback on that with these gentlemen that are sitting here that are very, very well versed in that's exactly what it is. In that it's just duplicitous and doublespeak, and it really needs to be exposed. And they did a very, very poor job at doing it, so I'm going to try to do a better job here. Now, in the first video, I spent the first section of it showing a little bit about him, of where he comes from, what his past is, what the Brookings Institute is. And basically my point was that is to show that he's not in this discussion to take on other people's points of view and to find kind of common ground. They're in this discussion, people like him, to basically push their Marxist social engineering worldview of what needs to be done. And this whole interview was just chocked full of that sentence by sentence of exactly that's what they're up to, but it needs to be deciphered. I didn't pick up on this type of stuff years ago when I saw people like them. I thought they really were coming in good faith and were fair-minded, and I thought it was a positive development that somebody finally from the establishment is paying attention to some of these serious problems that we have going on that up until now they don't address. And I've come to realize over the years that it's not the case at all. They're really here kind of as a gatekeeper to corral the agenda into what they want the results to be. But anyway, let's go ahead and just get right into it, taking off from where I was yesterday. But I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and start here. He had just gotten triggered at Rollo using the terms mangina and pussies. And then he's talking about they're taught that that's the way Rollo says it. That's the way that many women are perceiving men nowadays. And so then, okay, what do we do about it to make things better? And he starts in on here talking about how we don't want the future to be androgynous. It can't be androgynous. Although if you take a look around, that's exactly where the future is going if something major is not done about it, without a doubt. And it's largely due to the initiatives that people like him that have been pushing. And now they want to come back and make it look like they give a crap and undo these problems that they created. What I really want to focus on here is that this is just such a tired point that it's almost unbelievable that we have to keep on addressing it. That although we don't want androgyny, and we want men to be men and women to be women, we don't want equalism, as he calls it. We want equality. Now, this term equalism is often called equity these days, which means the equality of outcomes, not the equality of opportunity. So the equality of outcomes means that you must find that every group has the same results when they dedicate themselves to different things as everybody else, which is absolutely absurd, and it's completely, totally Marxist. It's like a forced equality. He says we just want equality. Okay, then if that's not what it is, quote unquote, I believe that's what he is describing as equalism, this forced equal outcomes of everything. And he said, well, yeah, we don't want that. We just want equality. Well, then what is equality? What equality don't women have? They can't vote. They can't own property. They can't get divorced. They can't have custody of their own children by themselves. They're prohibited from getting into certain types of work by law. Of course not. So then what's left? What's left is addressing exactly what he says he doesn't want to address, making sure that they are represented in everything across the board. So on face value, they completely, totally contradict themselves. But let's just hear it in his words and take it from there.
Area of disagreement. So I think where we agree is the future is not and should not be androgyny.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But
I agree.
But we do want equality.
Yeah.
Right. Not equalism, which is I think what you call it, but equality without androgyny. So recognizing these differences, but still having equality.
And that's the trick, isn't it?
And I think, for example, and I cite this in the book, the fact that 40% of women now earn more than the average man
Okay, I believe I addressed this already yesterday, of him talking about that it's the greatest thing since sliced bread that women can earn more than what men can earn. And as I asked, how? Besides just the buying power, how has this been a great thing for society? But I'm going to go on to the next one because I believe I do, or I have already addressed that. Let's go to 4520 here. Close enough.
So I read the evidence on this a couple of things differently here. One is, you mentioned this point about the politics here and the emotional insecurities of women, I think is the phrase you used. I think right now that it's the emotional insecurities of men that are being exploited by politicians.
Okay, this is very rich, and you hear this constantly. This is a form of shaming language. It's the emotional insecurities of men. Now, when you say to somebody that they're insecure in something, of course it can have legitimacy, but by and large, this is used as a kind of a, offhand, passive-aggressive insult. Obviously, if you're insecure in something, and the implication is here as you listen to them, it's unreasonable, then you must be defective if you're insecure about that. You're weak, is basically what it means. And as he's going to go on to say here, which this has been trolled out thousands and thousands of times over the years, it's that men are losing power, so basically they're intimidated by women, and this is why they're struggling. So what's the further implication? Men are power hungry. They just have to have power for them to do well. It couldn't at all be that there's been a weaponized court system, as I keep mentioning, that men are divorce raped, that men have been faring terribly in child custody cases, that there's been a slew of false allegations against men for years and years now, that they're being disenfranchised unfairly systematically through affirmative action programs for women, preferences for women, that they're being constantly shamed and demonized and emasculated in the media. No, it couldn't be any of that. Guys like him will touch on that briefly as though it's, just a little thing. But really what it is, as you hear from his own mouth right here, it's just that men are insecure because they're losing power. Let's listen to the rest.
On the right.
How so?
By pointing to the fact that men are struggling. Senator Josh Hawley, who has his own book coming out.
But we're saying that from both sides of...
Yeah, maybe men are struggling because they're being drowned.
They'll say, you're losing power, or what's happening, the feminists are coming for you, society's turned anti-men, etc., etc.
The feminists aren't coming for them? The society hasn't turned anti-men?
Etc. And actually that becomes a very powerful message for men who are really struggling. But actually, so that sense of like men struggling emotionally, economically, educationally is then weaponized by reactionary conservatives to say, yes, you are struggling, and it's their fault, the feminists' fault. So,
it's just all a big ploy. It's just that. I mean, sure, there might be guys that are doing that for political gain. That's what you do in politics. But is that what's really causing the state of men today? And as he says, let me just play a little more here, if he hasn't said it yet.
Vote for me and I'll bring back the 1950s, basically. So I think actually right...
Yeah, he did say it already, yes, that it's them to blame. Well, maybe it is them to blame. Maybe there is blame to go around. This is another strategy that I see with these people, that it all comes from everything is equal, there's really nobody to blame. What it is a structure. You can't blame the structure, of course, right? The structure is patriarchy. The structure is traditionalism. That's what needs to be done away with. And that is completely, totally Marxist. Because if you actually looked and said, no, there's been people that have been up to this with bad intention, they are to blame. And you know who the finger would be pointed at? Him and his work and all of his cohorts. Now, I really do think it's about 50-50. Are they actually conscious of that? And they're literally trying to hide and put blame on somebody else? They may be. They may not be. It might just be so strong culturally within them that they can't actually see that they believe in the BS that they espouse. They truly believe that it's a better way. But either one is not acceptable because the consequences have been disastrous and will continue to be disastrous. Let's play some more.
Right now, it's the emotional insecurities of men that are being politically exploited. But secondly, my read of the evidence about what both men and women want in each other is just very different to yours. When I look at what they want, there are some differences between them, but they want someone who's got their act together, who's kind of, purposeful in life, etc. Men actually do want women who are similarly educated to them. They do want women who are succeeding. And that's what all the evidence suggests to me. Now, So this idea that the men who are out there, so college-educated men, like men who are doing well, the idea that they're out there looking for a kind of like just an old.
Do you see how completely myopic this is? Completely. Men are doing well. You know, college-educated men. Those are the only ones that are doing well, right? There's no contractors that are doing well. No plumbers, electricians, bricklayers. The vast majority of men out there that are working class, the ones that are keeping your society going. Now he's talking, well, these are what the men say, and this is what all the evidence tells me. First and foremost, what evidence? Self-reporting evidence? It's been said for quite some time now, and it's kind of an ugly truth, and of course it's not all men, but there's a good percentage. Let's talk about real ugly truths here. That men will say all kinds of things to get laid. They'll sit across the table from her, and she looks good, and there's somewhat of a vibe there, and she's talking about her career and her achievements, etc. And as has been said many times before, it's not that men necessarily have anything against that. Most of the times I don't have anything against that. But it's not attraction to point. It's not what's making them harder than Chinese arithmetic. That she has a degree, that she has accolades, that she makes a lot of money. What does it for men is her femininity, her agreeableness, her cooperation, her values, and we can go on and on. Achievement and status, success, those are attraction points for women. Just a few words that need to be said to absolutely drive that point home. Proven by the actions of women themselves. 50 Shades of Grey. Nobody forced women to go and watch that movie, to read that book, by the millions and millions. They went complete total gaga for it. And if you're not familiar with it, it's about a high-powered man that is into kind of a BDSM lifestyle that dominates this woman and gets her all hot and bothered. It's really there's no story in it from what I can tell. I never read the book or saw the movie. I read up about it on Wikipedia. But from all reports I've gotten, that's basically what it's all about. And women went nuts for this. This is in the age of strong and empowered women, where they have all the choices. Except they can't say the story was decades ago. Well, women only reacted like that because men made them. They were brainwashed to react like that because of the patriarchal system. Well, you can't say that anymore in any way, shape, or form, because it's been for some time now that women have been outperforming men in university, out-earning them in urban centers, etc. So he is, saying that according to his evidence, reports from that demographic of men, and are they self-reporting reports of saying what they want, but is it what they really want? There has been a slew of articles, and he has to know this. This is where you really start to think that is, and I've said this repeatedly, are they really that obtuse and that dumb and have that narrow a vision? Or are they just straight out lying? Because if he's been looking into this stuff, and obviously if he dedicated a whole book to it, and has a PhD, and works for the Brookings Institute, it's completely, totally accessible to him. I haven't seen it for years. Of article after article, blog after blog, interview after interview, of college-educated women that earn a lot of money, that cannot find a man. And it's completely, totally recognized by the women themselves and by anybody who looks into it. It's not that they can't find a man. It's that they won't date down. They want a man at their level. Now he's saying, although the men want the exact same thing. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Say there's a large percentage of college-educated men out there that actually do want that. And then there's another layer. Do they really want it because it's what they really want, or because they've been completely, totally propagandized now for a couple of generations to, if they express, that really doesn't do it for me, even within themselves, that what they do really just want is the traditional housewife, as he's going to go on to say and kind of sneer at it. This idea that men just want these, traditional women that want to cook and clean for them, he says something as such, it's just, I don't see any evidence for it at all. Well, maybe men aren't saying it. Maybe they don't even realize it within themselves. Because how are these relationships working out with these men that want those type of women, supposedly? Are they staying married? I think what they say right now, that the divorce rate initiated by women is at like 70%. Out of all the divorces, women initiate 70%. And when it goes into the demographic of college-educated women, it goes up to 90% that they initiate. So is this really, even if this is true, that this is what men say they want, is it a healthy desire that's really within them, or has it been put in them through propagandizing them for a long time that this is what they're supposed to want? But does it create healthy relationships, healthy families, and marriages that last? Let's keep on listening.
Fashioned wife who's going to look after them. That's just wrong. They're all assortatively mating into. They want college-educated wives. They want equals in their marriages, don't they? That's what.
Don't they? Sounds like you have a little bit of doubt there, sir. Yeah, maybe those guys do. Once again, I'll go back to the point that I made. How many of them are those guys? Aren't the latest stats, it gets worse and worse, that the graduation rates, not just the enrollment rates, those are deceiving. It matters really on who graduates. Talking about university, I think it's 68% graduation rate of women and 32% men. So this is what 32% of the male population wants. And a large percentage of them are what? Guys like you? Are you really pushing society forward? Are you going to keep on building the bridges and maintaining the power lines and putting in the plumbing, cleaning the sewers, etc.? Don't think so. Let's keep going.
So let's talk about this. There's two things going on here. Number one, when we talk about a social contract, like a Magna Carta, one of the things that happens is we didn't want teenage pregnancy. We didn't want so much violence. And in doing so...
Okay, I don't think he has... Oh, no, let's see here. Maybe pretty quick. Now I'll jump ahead to 48 minutes here. 48:25. See what they have to say.
High expectations that college-educated women have of men, much higher expectations.
Yes.
And that half of them are saying the reason they're single is because they cannot find a man who meets their expectations.
And yet 40%...
There you go. Just said it. What I was saying.
of men are now attending college, and like 32% of them are graduating.
So the question is, what happens going forward? I'm reasonably confident that we're all just going to have to update our views of the world and what we're looking for in a mate.
Doesn't it just sound like complete, totally social engineering? Oh, forget all that stuff of the past that you guys wanted. We're just going to have to update and want new things. Whether you want them or not, you're going to want them.
Because that's just like, that's the way the market's going to play out. So right now, we're still figuring that out.
Just the way the market's going to play out. You can't do anything like they've done in Russia where they're, can't remember the exact stats, but something like if you have 4 or more children, you're going to be exonerated for income tax for life. Something of such. They'd have done, whether you agree with it or not, I'm not saying yay or nay. Chinese government, very well known, put in the one-child policy for quite some time to affect the way relationships are, what the family structure is, etc. Well, that's just the way the market is going. It's just this nebulous thing that's going by itself. There's no other influences on it. This is not believable. That I'm going to keep on saying it. I'll probably say it 20 more times before I finish this. Either one is not acceptable. Are you that dumb, or are you lying that much?
But we're all going to have to change the way we think about this. But I got to tell you, like,
so that's the difficulty
when you say,
right
like,
there.
if you say, I would like a woman who's earning $300,000 a year and has a master's degree. Thank you very much. And I don't.
Oh yeah, of course you would. Yeah, so that's what everybody wants, right? That's a great study, my man. Astounding.
I think I'm alone in that, and it's not just because of the money. It's because an accomplished, professional, intelligent, successful woman who's like killing it at whatever she's choosing to do, that's incredibly attractive.
Well, maybe for you. I wouldn't describe you as the most masculine guy. I would also say, I think he even says at one point here that he got to be a house husband because his wife was doing all, so he can sit around and write books. Well, I guess that would be very attractive. That's not the vast majority of men, my man. Yesterday when I showed on his Wikipedia page, I don't remember the exact name, but it was something about how he's involved in this project for, and I really should bring it up again to refer to it, but something about bettering the middle. Everything is all about bettering the middle class, the working class, lifting people up for social mobility. So are those people that you're going to bat for, that you should obviously understand if you're going to be going to bat for them, is that what they want at all? Do you have any evidence for that? I don't think so in any way, shape, or form. How is it really relevant to this conversation that what you and your Ivy League cohorts and the ones that work on Think Tank Row think is healthy and reflective of society? Just astounding.
I think, to a lot of men. And probably to most men, there are very few men out there who don't want their daughters or their wives or their sisters to be very successful.
Well, let's what is successful then? What is successful? Let's qualify that. Is it just all about money and having that PhD and $300,000? Or maybe they have good values, ethics, moral, character, can be good mothers, can dedicate themselves to whatever it is for a long time, are dependable, you can count on them, are competent in many different things. Because you and I know that what he's really referring to is just being high earners and boss babes. And sure, even if that just existed on its own, but this is another one, if he'd done any due diligence of looking into the tsunami of men and women that have been talking about this now for years on forums all over in public, almost 9 times out of 10, it just does not come along with talking about a woman here that is so successful and on her game, that is so attractive to him, that she's just on her game and successful and very smart and accomplished. It also comes along with that she puts off childbearing and then often many times goes into a semi kind of desperation when she gets to be 30, 35 and hasn't had kids yet, which causes all kinds of issues. To be very successful like that, you have to be very driven, you have to be very competitive. You're often competing and rubbing shoulders with and throwing elbows with male-dominated environments that really diminish the woman's ability to be attractive to the vast majority of men in cooperation and being submissive and being feminine, having grace, etc. But that's not talked about at all. It's just such a simplistic view that is all that it is. This is these people's world outlook. It's all just materialist. And if you go into Marxism, once again, that is exactly what it is. The materialist dialectic is what it's called. It's all just about that. It's not about any values, morals, and principles. It's just that the material thing will make us all happy and make the world go around. The world that he lives in is the world that everybody has to live in because it works for him. But it doesn't work in general. We can't have just think tanks across the country and think things are going to run in any way, shape, or form. Not even close. Let's see if he has anything else to say worth hearing.
Professionally and economically. They then want them to have the choice to be able to do what they want without those resources. But
be able to do what they want. Once again, so simplistic. Like shoot heroin. Like then start an OnlyFans page. Like then have done 10, 12 years in university and get an advanced degree and go work at it for 5 years and then realize, oh, I don't really like this. Now I've got $250,000 in student loan debt, and then just marry up and check out. And now all that investment that could have maybe had a man in there that would dedicated himself to 40 years in that profession and built a firm and provided for a family, now that's just all gone to waste? Is that considered at all? And once again, these things have been talked about and analyzed for years by a lot of heavy hitters. There's absolutely no way that this is not on his radar, that he shouldn't be considering or haven't considered them. And they probably do, and they just kind of throw them away because that's the old patriarchal system. That's not worthy of looking at. That's how their mind works.
But I think you're wrong if the suggestion of what you're saying is that, yeah, secretly the guys out there, you know, they just want women to be the way women were before.
No, it's not that. But the problem is if you have a group of men, Bill Maher, he said this on one of his shows, is like you have a group, you have these women where 60% of them are going to college, and I believe 68% of them are.
Yeah, no, they're just kind of rehashing. So let's go on to the next one here. Let me see. It's just a little bit jumped ahead, so it might still be in the same kind of vein of what they're already talking about, but we'll see.
Actually, a lot of people are worrying about this. I'm not as worried about this as they are. I'll tell you why I'm not as worried about this. Because I think what's going to happen is that women are going to adjust their expectations of the educational credentials of their husbands. They're going to have to.
Right.
Which
I agree with the second part, but not the first part.
But they won't reckon up. So I think about my own family, right? In my own family, I have someone. She's a nurse. He's a plumber.
Yeah.
Okay, stop it right there. They're going to have to adjust the educational expectations. They're going to have to. No, they don't have to at all. They don't have to at all. They're not already. This man hasn't heard of in vitro fertilization and sperm banks? And these women and stories and blogs and interviews all over the place. editorials celebrating how she became a single mother with no father at the age of, or no husband, no father for the child at the age of 36. That, you know, they can't adopt, or, you know, what is the latest stat out? That by 2030, 45% or 50% of women out there will be single and childless at the age of 30 or over, something as such. No, they don't have to do anything. Gave the anecdotal example that because his sister is a nurse and her husband is a plumber, then that's what everybody's doing, I guess, and it works for all of them. But there's no qualification. Is it going to work in the long term? How long have they been married? How are their kids? How healthy is their relationship? There's many other qualifiers. It just seems to be assumed because he can find one here and there. This is going to be the norm, and it's going to work for everybody else. Maybe it works in his world once in a while, but I don't see any evidence that this is a standard way to go.
Right? He's much less educated than her. He also makes a very good living. Are we going to see a world where nurses are going to refuse to marry plumbers just because?
It's already happening en masse. Where have you been?
Because they didn't get a 4-year degree? I don't think so.
I think we are. But the problem is...
You see him just kind of chuckle at, how stupid is this? It's just insane. Once again, I'll keep repeating myself that this guy lives in the think tank row academia world and believes that this is the whole world.
The problem is when we survey, we have, you know, lots of women on here. There's other shows that have lots of women. It does not.
Okay, he's going to go into their preference for height difference and whatnot. And one other point on when he says that women are going to have to adjust their standards. Well, it's not just that they can have a baby on their own and then make their 6 figures. They've also been getting massive government help for decades. And there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. And if you've been demonizing men for generations now, that they don't need no man, and you know, and their expectations are so high, and they already enter into the relationship with a certain disdain. Why do they have to adjust their expectations? It's just infantile. These concepts that this man puts out. These are our thought leaders, ladies and gentlemen. These are the heavy hitters. Let's go to the next one.
There's a very useful term in economics that would help us here, right? Which is the difference between preferences and revealed preferences.
Sure.
Which is what people...
There you go. I think I referenced this earlier, that he would come to this, of what people say they want and what they actually do. Going back to exactly what everything we were just talking about. I don't think men want this. This is what men say they want. Is it what they really want? And if they act on it, is it working out?
Will actually do.
Yes.
Right. Here's what people say. Here's what they actually do.
Medium is the message.
And if you ask people, especially, you know, that was a relatively small sample that you've just quoted, and maybe not a random sample of women, right? So you're going to get different answers. But then let's look at what people do. And so, like, we know that men on average are a little bit taller than women. We know there's lots of women who are kind of with shorter men, and they kind of figure it out. So let's see what people actually do rather than what they say. It's a bit like saying, like, men sometimes, I think, can convince themselves maybe that they're going to get like a very beautiful woman, say, right? That kind of...
Okay, I think that's about it on that one. He doesn't have much more to say. I'm gonna he has a lot more to say, of course, not much more that's worth listening to for our purposes here. So let's jump up to the next one. See what other nonsense it's going to spew out of his pie hole here.
Downstream effects we were just talking about, like when you put women into a position of political, economic power, the consequences of that is the evolutionary, like the machine doesn't change. So when a woman is, what was the girl who was on here who had, she was the real estate woman?
This is the one I'm getting to here. Check this out. This is why I stopped it. We're about to talk about this high-earning woman here.
And who was making like $6 million a
Savannah
year.
Storm is a real estate agent who has sold several $1 million worth of homes. But she sells them to OnlyFans girls who make a bunch of money. So while she's making $5 million, whatever, doing this, she's also having sex on browsers. Dudes lost their mind. The idea that this woman who's a porn star is making so much money in real estate was like mind-blowing for them. And I brought her on specifically to trigger these guys because I love the idea. Because one of the things that these guys do is like when a woman does not fit a traditional role of a wife, therefore she should have to pay for it. And I'm like, no, guys, that's not the world we live in.
Right.
Women get...
So I don't even get the point there at all. At all. I brought that up just to show also the delusion and why this guy's not getting any pushback. Because these are the guys that are, you know, obviously have some common ground with him and talking about men's issues. But they should be taking it much, much deeper, just where I'm coming from. And now he pivots right into wanting to bring this high-earning real estate porn star on to trigger men. What's the point? I guess he's trying to say, well, this is what you need to want nowadays. What you guys tell me. This is why we're not faring too well, because these are the guys that are supposed to represent the real unbridled, red-pilled, masculine truth. And that's just a huge fail. To me, that was just, I brought it up just for the cringe element of him going on about that example. I don't get why you want to bring this girl on to trigger these men with how much money she makes in real estate and porn. But seems rather, frankly, clownish to me. Let's go on to the next one. Nope, we got a commercial up in here. Hang on.
If the men become superfluous, to use your words, then history would teach us that we're in for a lot of trouble, a lot of crime, a lot of violence. It's going to, because actually it's what Joe Henrich calls the math problem of surplus men. Right? It's a beautiful phrase in his book, Weird. The math problem of surplus men, and it causes all kinds of violence. And actually there's this really interesting evidence from China that Lena Edlund had, which showed that the result of the one China policy and differential abortion was you had a surplus of men hitting certain Chinese districts at different times, more crime. And so this was the concern, but actually crime's gone down. We've become less violent as a society.
Okay, I do believe, if my memory serves me correctly, he started with this in the video I did yesterday. And I really take issue, once again, according to stats, crime has gone down. And I talked about it yesterday, that according to stats, and there's real major problems with these stats, that they've quit prosecuting all kinds of crimes. There's all kinds of incompetence. There's a massive shortage of police officers, investigators, district attorneys, corruption and Marxism within that system that refuse to investigate. If you even look at what happened, I think I mentioned yesterday, in the past 2 years with Black Lives Matter, and tens of thousands of people probably participating in burning down the cities. And we know it was reported extensively that who knows what the number is, we'll never know. But thousands of them were not prosecuted, investigated, indicted. And so on your stats, you'll show that, you know, there weren't really cities burning down because people weren't held responsible for it. So I have a huge problem with that just right there. But even beyond that, even if it is true, if violent crime is going down, and he's going to kind of get into this, but once again, he just kind of hand waves it off as if it's kind of no big deal. Well, you know, they expected that with surplus men that aren't getting married, there would be a lot of crime, increase in violence. But what we're really seeing, it's not that way, because they're going down to the basement and checking it. Now, that'll cause some other problems, but, you know, we'll kind of see. No. This is a massive, major issue that could very potentially be a powder keg that will eventually explode. And if it doesn't do that, if it keeps on continuing as such, it'll collapse society, because when millions of men do this en masse for a prolonged period of time, they won't be building your houses, repairing things, investing, protecting, etc. But let's hear the rest of it.
Society. And I think that's because men have retreated. I think that rather than acting out, like
we're sedated right
there's
now.
this kind of, there's this fear of like a Mad Max style world where these bands of marauding surplus men would be kind of wreaking havoc. And in fact, the opposite has happened.
They underestimated how lethargic
because porn, strip clubs, and video games.
The internet came. And so here's a really provocative thought, is that rather than screens being the problem, maybe screens have actually helped to save us from some of what might have been the worst consequences of...
See, so there, check that out. That is fascinating, right? Here's a really provocative thought. Maybe all these guys checking into prawn all day long and smoking weed and playing video games, well, that's kind of been a good thing. Now, he will go on to say, well, you know, maybe not. It has kind of some issues. But you see the way that he leads with, well, maybe this has saved us. You know, that's probably the good way to go for this problem. Yeah, it's lifting up women. Lifting up women is just going to result in millions of men being disenfranchised. So can you not see the corollary of where that can also go? So why don't we just give them more antidepressant medicine, make sure they got more weed, make sure they got more adult material to follow online, more video games, more junk food, etc. It's, once again, just astounding how they reveal what they're really inclined to. They're really okay with this paradigm, that this isn't a major, major problem, that he's recognizing right then that, he said, what did he say? Men have, what did he say? Not retired, or, they have withdrawn, something as such. Yeah, that this has been known about for a long, long time. He finally seems to be dawning on him as though he has some great insight. Astonishing.
The surplus men. Now, I'm not suggesting it's good, but it might be better than the alternative. And so the conservative...
There you go. Right, there's two options. Right? Either these men are going to be out chipping out everywhere, killing, raping people, or they can be out video games. Yeah, maybe it's not good, but it's better than them chipping out. Or maybe you could just make them useful. Maybe you could kind of give them respect. Maybe you could call off the dogs so they're not being emasculated and constantly under attack through the media, academia, divorce courts, custody cases, being shamed, falsely accused, etc. So we could just have an equilibrium. That could be another option, but that won't occur to you at all.
Conservatives who warned about the effect of these superfluous men didn't anticipate the internet. They didn't anticipate video gaming.
And when we...
Oh, real quick. People will probably say, but he says all of that in his book. I don't really care. I don't really care if he says all that in his book. Why is that not touched on here at all? Why are we not talking about solutions and just that? That can be thrown in very quickly. Well, this is what you guys are about, solutions here. That's already been touched on. That's why I'm in these spaces over here to talk to you guys. So what I advocate, is basically, we need to get a healthy environment to get men out of the basement and back into being productive. No, not even mentioned.
You see this same surplus men effect in, say, Middle Eastern countries where there is no porn and strip clubs.
There's more violence.
There is more violence. We're going to strap a dynamite to our chest and go into a coffee shop in Tel Aviv.
Or just more generally. I mean, this is actually Joe Henrich's work on this is actually terrific, I think.
Okay, that's about all he's got to say on that for now. Let's go over to the next one here. No, let me play it a little bit longer here.
Where
Maybe
he
not.
shows that 95% of societies have been polygamous,
Yes.
and usually polygynous.
Yeah, polygynous.
Yes, thank you for men with multiple wives and not the other way around, right? And then marriage comes along. More monogamy, testosterone goes down because actually that reduces testosterone.
It does.
Violence massively goes down. You don't have this competition, this kind of ferocious competition that there previously was. And so actually his argument is that monogamy, largely promoted by the Christian church, helped to create a peaceful society because it did take away this kind of competition.
So there you go. There you go. That's a mic drop moment right there. He seems to be giving credence. He didn't say this was a crackpot idea or a false history. That actually the paradigm in the past worked pretty damn good in a lot of senses.
Sure, now, certainly. You might end up with a situation now where, for a very different reason, you have men who are surplus to requirements, not because of polygamy, but because of women's economic independence. Women can go it alone now, but it still leaves a lot of men on the bench. What do? Well, they don't.
Just because of women's economic independence. Once again, it's not the systematic disenfranchisement of men under attack. It's just because women have been uplifted and they got their independence. So everybody's just going to have to deal with it because that on face value is a great thing. We all know that.
Maraud around. They go to the basement.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so I think that's a kind of different order of social problem than the one that perhaps people worried about. But it's not to say it isn't a problem. And I think that's the gap that many men are falling into.
Yes.
They don't feel needed. Yeah. They don't feel like there's anyone out there relying on them or expecting them to do anything.
Yeah, and sorry, you're probably beating a dead horse over here, but once again, this guy's coming out from the Brookings Institute as though he's discovered, the 10th planet or something as such. Give me a break. Men have been talking about this for a long time now. Academics, people all over the place. And now, men, really don't feel like they need it and they need a purpose, and so now they're being relegated to the basement. Blah blah. Get the hell out of here. You're supposed to take this guy seriously, as though he's rehashing the hard work that other people have done for years, and they were all poo-pooed, right? A lot of these guys were just completely slandered and belittled and laughed at, and man up, what are you talking about? Men don't have problems. They're the top CEOs in all the boardrooms, which is 0.001% of the population, something as such as if that's reflective of all men. Anyway.
And then you've got these very accessible alternative forms of quotes entertainment that are dopamine addicting and so on. So I think you've created a bit of a cocktail there for male retreat, male passivity, what I call the male malaise. So that's how I see the consequences of this playing out.
Well, one of the things
No, check that out. See what I'm saying? Like, so that's where he rests his hand or his face, his chin on his hand, and end of story. Oh, we have a kind of a cocktail here for a male malaise. And that's how I see this playing out, right? That's how I see it's playing out. Oh, okay, that sounds great. I mean, wouldn't anybody that's in this discussion for solutions immediately follow up with? So we really need to address this of making these men feel more useful, making them feel respected, putting in a structure that actually does that, not just that they feel that way, but they actually are more valued and respected, and maybe we can address this problem. How long did that take me to address? 20 seconds? Oh, no, but go read his book. He says all of that in his book. Why can't you say it here in front of everybody? Let's go on to the next one.
Independence is a genuinely good question.
Yes.
And one that thoughtful people have been asking
So both
for
things
a
can be
while.
true. It is
Right.
good that women have higher economic independence, and
Absolutely.
we have a problem because we have
Right.
a bunch of men that these women don't want.
That there's this second round effect, especially when it happens this quickly.
Yes.
Right? When you have a change of this magnitude, this fast.
In 20 years.
I mean,
Yeah.
like a generation, right? It's unbelievably quick. And so then it's not.
And this is another one that's completely disingenuous. I hear people saying this constantly, and I'm just at a complete total loss of how to even respond. Well, look how fast this has happened in the past 20 years. 20 years ago was 2003. Women couldn't vote in 2003. There weren't millions upon millions of women in the workforce in 2003. There wasn't already a slew of female politicians in 2003. This has been going on for 3 generations, at least, at a fevered pace. And the feminist movement, as I'll be showing in my other videos, has been well over a century, arguably back to over a century and a half ago.
Not surprising that our culture is struggling to catch up, our sense of what it means to be a man is struggling to catch up, etc. And so he's asking the right question because lots of people are addressing that. And I first of all, I think I'd probably retreat to fatherhood first of all because I'm incredibly convinced that dads really matter for their kids' lives.
Yeah.
And so whatever's happening in marriage, whatever's happening between men and women, dads still matter. I don't think fathers are so.
Whatever happens between men and women, dads still matter. So let's qualify that. What is that? Whatever's happening, well, what if there's constant breakups and toxicity because of this paradigm that you've been promoting? Well, but just keep dad around so he can visit on weekends and send money? What does that mean by a dad? Is a dad you? That seems to be it, right? He seems to go back to that constantly. Intellectuals on think tank row that can make 6 figures and stay at home, and their wife is a high-powered boss babe.
Plus to requirements. And the danger with the old-fashioned message, which is that dads matter because they're breadwinners, is that in a world where that's much less likely to be true now, you're in danger of benching the dads because we're holding them up to obsolete standards of what it means to be a good dad. And so they hear that message and they say, well, they don't need me anymore.
I also think the foundation of the question, though, goes back to the...
Once again, so completely shallow and undimensional that all it is, you go back to it time and time again, it's just about money. It's an obsolete where the danger of the obsolete, what did he say, traditional model, old model, antiquated model, is that men were the breadwinners, and now that is an obsolete model. So now you don't have any use for me anymore. So men had no role at all in putting boundaries, teaching ethics and morals, protecting, guiding, putting structure to a family. I mean, I can go on and on. Got to read between the lines with these people. Okay, let's see the next one here at 105.35. I'll stop at 33.
Women, including almost all feminists, who will honestly tell you that the world would be better off without men.
I think they would tell you that the world would be better off if men...
Yeah, I think I cut that out at the very beginning. I don't think you will find any women or even feminists, they'll tell you that the world would be better off without men.
Men weren't running things. I do think they would say that.
I think they would tell you that the world would be better off if it wasn't only men running things. And there, I completely agree with them. I think the world is better if it isn't only men running
absolutely.
things. And by the way, but I don't want a world.
Okay, first of all, put that aside, but just where's your evidence? How much better are things getting? Besides just taking on face value that it adds quality to have more women in things. Are budgets more balanced since we've had this massive interjection of women into the workforce and into politics and into leadership? Is the court system running better? Is the infrastructure being built up better? Is people's personal health better? Is their mental health better? Now, I'm not pinning this on women, but where is your evidence? There's been a massive influx of women now for decades. Show us where things are better. Things are way better for him and his friends. Things are way better in tech that gives us more trinkets and whatnot that very few people are doing, and it's still massively male-dominated and driven. So where are things better?
Well, that's only run by women.
Right.
That's the point of gender equality. But I think this idea that there is a sort of a group out there.
Oh, but I forgot the point. When you can't tell me that you will find women that will say we'd be better off without men. This is going to have to be a subject for another video, because there is a plethora throughout feminism of promoting this. And yes, of course, their comeback will be, well, the vast majority of women don't say that. Well, it was good enough to put it in textbooks, and they're lionized by academia like him that set policy, that set the tone, that people refer to. People like Valerie Solanas, Andrea Dworkin, even Sally Fields, about 10 years ago, stood up at the Oscars and made an unhinged speech about how we will never get to a place of peace and understanding until we have women in every position of power across the world. There's been a plethora, uncountable, infinite number of incidents that have happened that I've followed over the years, like chat logs being leaked from feminist sites. Jezebel, I think one was called Feministing, where there were female daycare workers, all piling in about how much they absolutely hated these little male kids they had to look after, that they were just going to become future rapists, on and on. There is a very, very constant strain of a lot of misandry, man-hating out there. And for him to just belittle it, that say, no, they're just all fair-minded, they just want equality. And I'll go back to, once again, if that were true, then why do they not want equality across the board? Why do they not want equality in all of the heavy trades and the dangerous jobs, in child custody cases, in child support payments, much more fair results in divorce? Yeah, he's the one that said it earlier about what people say and about what they do. Where are they doing and showing that they want fairness?
A radical feminists who kind of want to wipe out men in some way.
Let's get into that, because I think this is.
So there he is. I think it's crazy. Radical feminists don't want to wipe out men. There was, back like 10 years ago, one was a prominent article. I need to look this up again. And one was a magazine cover of a major publication. I think it was either Time or Newsweek. That one said, "Are men obsolete?" And the other one said, "The end of men." Where the whole article was just a massive screed about why men aren't really needed anymore, how women are dominating everything. And it is so completely narrow-sighted and self-centered in that they just, by university degrees, by X amount of women that have become corporate CEOs, in what? In BlackRock? At Target? Bureaucratic positions in the government? But what are they actually running and producing? And you're asking, are men obsolete? Well, I guess if you don't like power, we could say men are obsolete, or running water, or houses being built, or your car being fixed. your computer running properly, new cell phones coming out, etc., etc., etc. And you can see his face on here on the screen. He just, scoffs and kind of sneers at, this attitude that, that they're just completely discounting men. It's crazy. Where does that come from? I mean, this working class idiot right here talking on this mic has been hearing this message loud and clear, as of millions of other men. Amazing.
This is the key.
I need to get a superset.
Okay, for sure.
Travis, can you get the
Yeah.
super?
Okay, we're going to go into the next one here. Well, having a hard time. Okay, we'll stop it there. I was looking for 49.
That are creating real difficulties for real people.
There's another fantastic book. It's called Conquering the Sociopath Next Door by Dr. Martha Stout. She wrote the first one called The Sociopath Next Door in 2005, and the second one in 2015. When she wrote, or in 2020, when she wrote the book, one of the things she talks about at the end of the book is called corporate sociopathy, and the idea that you take a bunch of empathetic people and put them into a corporate structure, and they are incentivized to do things so that they don't lose their job and that the corporation makes more money. And you take the same thing and you can extrapolate it to government. I do things to make sure I continue to get reelected and make sure that my tribe and my team wins. And in doing so, I have little to no empathy for other tribes. And when you look at it, when you examine it as corporations are a legal fiction, when you examine the legal fiction as a human being or as an individual entity, it acts like a sociopath. But the people inside of it were not sociopaths. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
It does, yeah. And you've raised the issue of empathy.
No, I'm just going to say on that, it sounds like a bit of a cope with me and once again trying to shift blame. Oh, no, none of the people that are involved in the sociopathical behavior of the corporation are, they're all just great, upstanding people. And that's not to say that there's not good people within there. Okay, but my experience in the corporate world, and I've got a lot of it, is they take on a lot of those qualities, especially if they spend enough time over there. But anyway, that's a side note. See what he has to say.
Empathy, and I do think that, and I know this is rational, we're being empirical, etc. But I think that one of the reasons why why men and boys in particular are attracted to a number of male figures is because they feel like they're empathizing with them. They're just understanding that they're struggling.
Yeah.
Right? And I think understanding that is one of the reasons why a lot of boys and men are drawn to the kind of, you've called it the manosphere, etc. And even to people like Jordan Peterson and so on. It's just because I think, oh, thank goodness he's listening to me. I actually did a Big Think video that's had a lot of views, and I've had so many emails from young men just saying, I was in tears by the end of this video. Thank you.
Okay, that's why I brought this one up again, because it's very indicative of his complete mindset that is all about the feels and is really quite effeminate, let's be frank. That what it really is that men are just feeling with us, which, of course, there's legitimacy there, but it's just a small part of the picture. What about the injustices that I keep going back to? What about the major issues? What about the thousands of exchanges and accounts that I have read and engaged in over the years of young guys that are very pessimistic, sometimes even very despondent, and sometimes scared witless to participate in the dating market, to get married, to have kids, because they have seen several uncles, fathers, brothers, cousins ground up completely in the anti-male system. Where is that? Or is it's just all this feel-good, lovey deal? Oh, well, you felt for me, because this is the inference. Now that women have been rising up and we're just kind of being pushed aside, we need somebody to feel for us so we can just talk about our feelings and get it all out there. That ain't going to do jack. Feels don't get anything done. That ain't going to do jack. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's been long enough. I think I've gone way too long today. Going to be one more breakdown on this to finish it up. So again, I hope at least a few people found some of this maybe insightful, and I'll be back at it again soon.